Hey, everybody, it's Matt Michaels here on the DeFalco Files with the one and only Joe DeFalco. He's the owner and creator of Future Stars of Wrestling, FSW, here in Las Vegas, Nevada. How you doing today, Joe?
Oh, words cannot describe it.
This past weekend, before we get into wrestling talk, a little bit of football draft went on. Anything good come out of it for you?
Not really. I'm a huge football fan, but I'm more of a football fan. With me, it's normally team driven for most people. For me, it's individual. So if I like somebody, like a Pat Mahomes, now I'm rooting for Kansas City because I really like him.
Sure.
You know, and looking at the draft, it's the same thing. They all take those quarterbacks early, and 3 out of the 5 won't pan out, and the other 2 will still get another chance. Like Sam Darnold, they blame the Jets, and It's a new philosophy and a new thing. Well, then why wouldn't you keep Sam Darnold? He's a good quarterback. Supposedly, He was the number 2 pick in the draft. Now you just traded him to get another number 2 or 3 pick in the draft. And now Darnold moves over to Carolina, who then they got rid of Bridgewater, who then goes to Denver. But Drew Lock was supposed to be the guy, but then they got Bridgewater. And it's just like the rotation system. And then you got Garoppolo, who does nothing but win when he plays, but he's not flashy enough. So people want to get rid of the guy.
Yeah.
For a guy who probably won't be ready for a couple of years. He went to a very small school.
Yeah.
So people like, oh my God, you can't sit the guy for a year. Well, maybe Miami would have been in the playoffs if they would have sat Tua for the year and just let Fitzpatrick play.
Yep.
Back in the day, Aaron Rodgers sat 2 or 3 years. Didn't stunt his growth in any way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And even though like someone like Steve Young was, a guy who had a number of years under his belt, with the Bucks, and then also with the AFL or the USFL, right? He had to sit behind Montana when he came in. It's like the Bears, they trade up now for Justin Fields, but they just signed Andy Dalton, and apparently they had to call Andy Dalton and just let him know, oh, no, you're still going to be our starter. And it's
don't worry, you're still going to be our starter whether you suck or not. Well, no, he's not. It's like he's got to perform. With the Cowboys last year, Dalton played pretty well early, but then he kind of struggled. He's one of those up and down quarterbacks. He's like a Fitzpatrick where he can put on amazing games and then shit the bed, and there's just not a lot of consistency with him. So, in the right situation, and it's a lot of systems, man. System quarterback. It's like if Justin Fields gets the system that they want to roll him out and do stuff, well, he'll probably be more successful than having to run Andy Dalton's offense, which is probably going to be, a pocket offense.
Right. And with no offensive line, we're seeing this more and more in football. No offensive line. You're a pocket quarterback, forget it. Your career is probably going to be over because you're going to get hit. And Dalton already had that horrifying injury, a few years back. So it's interesting to see how the game has evolved. And, I look at your jersey that you're wearing right now. Whatever happened to the running backs that we grew up?
Greatest running back of all time for only 6 or 7 years, but he took so much punishment. Earl Campbell, one of the, and let me tell you something. I was an Oklahoma fan as a kid, and he played for Texas, and I was still amazed. They still show some of those highlights where he's just barreling through people, and he looks like the linebacker and not the running back.
Yeah.
And, I don't know what it is, because even a guy like Ezekiel Elliott, who they did draft high and they did put in a good position, he was great. He held out, and then he came back, and he's been, a shell of what he was. Is it the offensive line? I don't know. Not everybody's like Ricky Williams, who took some time off, and when he came back at 31, 32, he was still good. Nowadays it's like it's this huge rotation system, and the only recent running back that's really been the guy that's always around to get all the carries was Barkley with the Giants, but then he got hurt real early last year. So
and I also think too, if I just thinking back, like watching Walter Payton, watching Emmitt Smith, watching Barry Sanders, there was this factor too where those guys, even though they took a lot of hits, you never saw those guys on an injury list, which to me, I mean, what happened to that?
I was never the biggest Barry Sanders fan over Emmitt Smith. I always thought Emmitt Smith was way better. The thing with Barry Sanders was his first 10 carries, he can run for a total of 3 yards, and then he runs for 70 yards. And now all of a sudden he's got 11 carries for 80 yards. Oh, man, Barry Sanders, fantastic. And that's why it's like he didn't get a lot of touchdowns, because those 1 yard, 2 yard runs, he wasn't built for that. And, that's why I would have took a Walter Payton or an Emmitt Smith all day over Barry Sanders. Without a doubt, the most exciting running back probably ever. And I see him juke and jive and make guys miss unbelievably, But he was also a guy that probably ran for more minus yards on a carry than anybody in the history of football.
Yeah, because again, when you put talent with a team that's just unbelievably horrible, except for I think they had 2 good years. I think he only made the playoffs once. It's just mind-boggling how
they did have a great quarterback. They had Eric Hipple and Scott Mitchell, so
Eric Hipple. Oh man, Scott Mitchell used to kill the Bears. I used to hate him. And then I think the Bears got him for like a season, and it was like, well, that's not the guy who played against us. What the fuck? Yeah,
he had that one good year when Marino got hurt, and then got the big contract, and wasn't that great.
So this week we're heading into big old Cinco de Mayo in the middle of the week, and then just a couple days later, on Saturday the 8th, we get Psycho de Mayo.
That's right. Much more enjoyable this year than Cinco de Mayo.
Absolutely. If you want to let the fans know, there's going to be Psycho Clown, but the opponent was just revealed. Who is Mr. Psycho Clown going to be wrestling?
He is going to be wrestling Sam Adonis, who we've had at the arena before. Not working for FSW, working for Sin when he was doing his stuff. But anybody who follows AAA saw that the invasion began as Sam Adonis is a CMLL guy. I don't know the circumstances in that, but he debuted as a mystery partner in the main event at one of the biggest shows that AAA has, and the feud just getting restarted in AAA, and now we're coming to Vegas. So we're fortunate enough that we're going to be hosting the matchup. Where Psycho Clown and Adonis, before the pandemic, they were kind of running the circuit, and from different companies in Mexico on the indies, and now they're in the same company. So, we're hoping that once again, because it happened before with Cross, that, our footage gets put on AAA television, thanks to our good buddy Conan.
Yeah. Let me ask you about Conan. How did your relationship with him develop? And going back to your radio show days, when you were doing WCW, was he a guy that you actually met back then and started a relationship with then?
No, he was a guy I never met back then before. We may have chatted a little bit, because he represents, a lot of the luchador guys, and he was a guy to connect if you wanted Pentagon and Phoenix. And we tried a couple times, nothing really worked. But shockingly enough, my son appear on their podcast, doing some goof skits with Disco Inferno. So the first time I met Conan was at the Lucha thing that Klein Rock and the Masked Republic did at the Westgate a few years back. And hey, I introduced myself. Hey, yeah, my son's Joey, blah, 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 FSW. And he knows who we are because, Disco was pounding cross to Conan for a very long time. So we finally hooked up. We chatted. It's like, hey, love to have you do a seminar, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, awesome. When Impact's in town, maybe we can do something, and it still took a little while. And he was working at Impact, and we got Hammerstone a match. He worked in a pre-show match against this guy, Brubaker, out of Chicago, pretty talented dude. And they had a match. Hammerstone was strong. They put him over. And the biggest concern was Hammerstone looking like Triple H, which was funny because the day of the tryout was the day before the show. And, that was one of the comments that were made, So that comment got back to Hammerstone. And when he showed up the next day for his match, he cut all his hair off and basically went, I think, Savers and bought some pants and totally different look. And Sean Dewari was an agent for his match. So when he came out and saw him, he was like, fuck, that's awesome that you took what was said and kind of changed it, but you still need to be the guy that they chose,
right.
Go crazy overboard, cutting the hair, good little spiel, but, utilize the look that you do have, and they chose not to sign him, but Conan liked what he saw and then, talked to the bosses at MLW, and within no time, Hammerstone was signed there and then got a great opportunity to where now he's one of their main guys. So then we did the tryout before Sam's Town show. I was one of the Meccas, and I felt that Damian Drake and Vandergriff would be guys that Conan can utilize. So we put matches together. There was probably, 16, 18. So we had about 8 or 9 matches, and I made sure Vandergriff and Damian Drake had the match together.
Sure.
And they had the match, all of a sudden he slowly started using them to where he became a regular in the Tijuana shows that they were doing, that Douglas James and a few other guys, Adrian Quest, I believe, and some other talent that was utilized, mixed in with the traditional AAA talent. So, right. And then after that, he was the one who brokered the deal for Pentagon and Phoenix. So right. We got them at the next Mecca after that. So, we've chatted on occasion, and once things get back up and running, hopefully we can do some stuff with them again. Or him again.
Yeah. Very valuable relationship. One of the best eyes for the business in Conan. And,
he's hooked up. It's rare to see a guy like that. It's like, oh, okay, he's a main guy at Impact. Oh, yeah, he's a main guy at MLW. Oh, he's a main guy at AAA. So you want to talk about multiple, connections, well, maybe you may not fit the lucha style of what they're looking for at that point. But hey, you might fit an MLW, might fit an Impact. And I'm pretty sure his word, goes pretty far with those companies because he seems to always pop up, whether it's another company in Mexico that I know he's been working with. Like, it seems like Conan is never at a shortage for work.
True. And it's like you said, invaluable, especially, with companies like MLW, which has now kind of struck up a little working relationship with WWE, it looks like. Um, I'm assuming WWE is going to be sending NXT talent that might not be getting enough exposure in terms of ring time to MLW. And of course, that means there'll probably be a little bit of a talent exchange. Most likely, MLW guys who go over might not, go over in matches that they might show up on. But does this open the door for guys like Hammerstone, even though he has a longer deal, the potential of A, the WWE taking a full-on interest, and B, because of her working relationship, is it easier for guys to get for a company like MLW to say, you know what, we'll give you your release because the big company we're working with really wants to have you and we don't want to hold you back from that experience? Would that be how that kind of working relationship would go for most, not specifically WWE, but for most companies that have working relationship to kind of help each other out?
Well, if you look back, Evolve was initially the place where WWE would send people, but the difference was Evolve wasn't really sending people to WWE. They, being that they were both based out of Florida, it was easy. But yeah, they may have used some of that talent for enhancement, but they were never put in any position to succeed until they got signed by WWE.
Right.
The other companies are looking at it as, hey, you know what? Kind of like us with Adonis and Psycho Clown. AAA is sending them. We are not involved in anything, travel, hotel, payments. So
Right.
it's a win for us, exposure and the ability to use the talent. So I'm pretty sure MLW is going to be excited. Not that they're going to be able to probably use guys like Gargano or Cross, but you never know.
Right.
You know what I mean? But, I can't see Hammerstone and Cross happening in a title match, but that would be crazy, if it did. Now, similar to the ECW WWE, relationship, yeah, I'm pretty sure if Vince wants a certain guy, like a Hammerstone, and he sees them, or a Jacob Fatu, to join the family, I'm pretty sure that negotiation will go a lot smoother, than it normally would. I know
Right.
Stone ain't going to be able to say, hey, bro, thanks for everything you're doing, but AEW wants to pay me a lot of money. I want to go. They're going to be like, too bad you got a contract. But if WWE's involved and WWE says, hey, here's a little something on the side, thanks a lot for letting it happen, those deals occur, then yeah, it definitely, there's no way in the world that can hurt a Hammerstone.
Right.
Do anything for him, but it can't hurt him. So it's possible that it could be a benefit. Even if they use footage of Hammerstone saying he's wrestling Dexter Lumis, and they're going to do it for the MLW Openweight Championship, and Hammerstone wins. Now, whether they're going to be using guys like that, or just a lot of the younger talent that never's on TV, that NXT fans don't even know who the guys are, well, then, that becomes a different story.
Right. And it makes me think of the relationship they had with Smoky Mountain, where you had a person like The Undertaker come down, and that was his first exposure to a guy who would become Kane and Glenn Jacobs as Unabomb. They used to have such a cool relationship where those bigger guys would go down and help out, Smoky Mountain.
Well, just like UPW when they sent RVD, the Hardys,
Yeah.
Nash, and Hall and Nash. I don't know if they were working for them at the time, but yeah, but they were basically the developmental on the West Coast, and they would have a big show. I'm pretty sure Rick Bassman enjoyed those ticket sales when the Hardys are wrestling on the show.
Oh yeah, it was always the Galaxy Theater that they used was a sellout. And it was a great little space because you had a bar in there. So you had extra basically standing room space because it was a little more open design. And yeah, when Regal, the Hardys, Angle, God, all these guys came through. But I found the most interesting person to me was when Bruce Pritchard would actually come in and watch, some of the work being done, and he would give the guys the notes, and it was, like you said, the developmental territory. So it was interesting to get that perspective of the training of what goes into a WWE performer, as opposed to, other guys who have wrestling schools at that time that were basically just collecting your $350 a month and, hey, go at it. Here's a ring. Have at it. We'll, pay you $20 to be on a show. When you look at your philosophy and the trainers you have at your school, with all that experience that the guys have and the wonderful emphasis that the students get because of all that experience, do you feel that when guys get the opportunity like Hammerstone will get in this situation, or like Lacey got at, the WWE tryout, that you guys are as close to a polished, finish of, let's say, high school graduation equivalent, so that the students can now go on to what would be essentially college or grad school, in the sense that they're ready to now learn that next tier of what it takes to then become a star in, a company like WWE.
Well, what you got to understand is, the training is the training. Okay. If you go to Nashville and you got Pritchard and Kane, and you come to Vegas, and there's many places that have really good trainers. The thing is, for people to get better, I could tell you all day till I'm blue in the face how to do something or what you shouldn't do. But when you step in to training and you have the list of guys that you're potentially working with matches and practicing with, whether it's a Remy Marcel, whether it's a Cody, whether it's a Sin, whether it's a Kenny King, whether it's, any of our main guys, when Cross was there, when Damian Drake and Vandergriff and Jay Vidal and Lacey, and you're getting to train with these people, how does Maserati and Sandra Moon not get better training with Lacey? Right. They're pushing them, not saying that they're complacent in any way, but maybe they feel they're good enough. And then now they feel, hey, you know what? I still need to do a little work, because now you're being pushed, because everybody has an ego in wrestling. If you don't have an ego, you're not going to succeed. If you're content with where you're at on the card, then you're never going to be that main event person. It doesn't bother me. I always joke about the Suavecitos and Danny, this is going to be the banger. We're going to have the match of the night. And that's great to know that and feel that. But the only thing I want to make sure of is when you don't have that banger and the match sucks, you need to work on stuff. And the
Right.
last match they had didn't go very well. And hey, Hefe, what'd you think? I'm like, well, to be honest with you, it kind of sucks. And like, yeah, we know, we're probably getting a little cocky. And it's like, a little cocky? You've never been a little cocky, but, sometimes you see the heat and you have a couple of good matches. And that's always going to happen with the younger guys. Like, they are going to have, if they're capable, they're going to have a really good match sometimes. And things are going to work perfectly. And if there is a mistake, it gets fixed quick. And then sometimes shit just isn't going to work. I always say, when Kenny King and Ricker, Eli Drake, had a match at Silverton, it was one of the worst matches on the card that day. It happens. The best of the best are still capable of having crappy matches. Just like a green guy who gets put on a show by us, we feel he's ready to work a little bit. He's definitely capable of knocking it out of the park, but in more cases than not, there's going to be stuff that needs to be picked apart because, Chris Bay wasn't unbelievable the first match he had. He was a guy who looked like, wow, this guy might be something, but he still had to get the experience and he had to grow and he had to understand how to work and he had to understand, dealing with the fans' reactions and, getting things that, hey, you know what? Moving forward, I'm not going to want to do this anymore. It looked good in training, but it kind of sucked in the match. And there's so much it takes to get to that level. A lot of times the younger teams, the younger guys, like, don't like hearing, there's the A-list and, they're the B team, basically. And not meant in a derogatory sense. It's meant we have our top tier tag teams, okay, for example, which is the R&B, Death Proof, Unguided. They were the top three. They've had the most experience. They've wrestled everybody. Vandergriff and Brett and Damian Drake were more singles guys put together, but they have tons of experience. The Sky Highs, the Creature Features, and even the Bad Bitches at that time, when they were first breaking in, Jay Vidal was very, very good. Parada was still at that inexperienced level. Jay had way more experience. So he kind of pushed that team to where they became, upper tier. And then you had the other three teams. And it's no slight on the other three teams. They're all solid and they all do good things, but they all have stuff that they need to work on. The Suavecitos of the three need the most experience. Creature Feature, they got to find their niche, character-wise, with the manager. And Sky High, they have a little more experience than both those teams. And you can see the progression. We joked a while back, they were looking good. Hey, we're going to put them in. They're going to have a match with the RMB. And it was like, they shit the bed. And now you either work harder and get better, or you become complacent and be content with being on some shows and not being on the big shows. Well, they stepped up and they forced themselves into a situation where they are a team that has great potential to be a top team. And, they're young in the business. They're not young in age. They're not 21, 22. They're, between Creature Feature and Suavecitos, they're young guys, I think, 24 might be the oldest of the four. You know what I mean? So the thing is, there's so much there, and you have to be willing to hear the criticisms. Sorry, I'm not going to praise you because you did a good arm drag takeover or hip toss. That's basic 101. You should be doing that.
Right.
About how the match was. When something broke down, how did you make up for it? Was it so noticeable that the fans were just like, oh man? Or was it just noticeable by the boys in the back and myself saying, oh, okay, they did a good job, that they kind of covered it up where only an expert eye, I guess you can say, because the fans want to be forgiving. You know what I mean? But when it becomes blatant, that's where those wonderful "you fucked up" chants came from.
The best chant in all of wrestling, that makes everyone feel so comfortable when that one starts. In the relationship between the talent and the promoter or the booker or the agents let's say in a WWE structure, or in a bigger organization structure, do you think that the talent that you guys have learns when to speak up about maybe any ideas they have or feedback, or uh, anything that could help potentially not sabotage themselves, but use that ego for good, in terms of, when you have a good idea, or even an idea that you think might work. Do you think that having you as an owner, having guys like Remy and Cody to be able to go to and talk to, is that something that's important to learn how to have those relationships with the people in those positions in other organizations, so that they're not being too aggressive, but they're also not just going into a corner and just saying yes sir, yes ma'am, and then going out and just feeling awkward because they don't know how to express themselves in those kind of situations? Is this the experience that's pretty invaluable for a lot of the guys with FSW?
Well, again, that becomes the growing nature of the talent improving, getting to that next level. Initially, when their perception is, oh, holy crap, I got to be on the show, they're going to do whatever they're told. Okay. So generally, if you're Nick Xander and Chase Bell and you're getting put together in a tag match and you're going to wrestle the Unguided, you're not going to probably make very many assumptions of what you want to do. They're going to put things together, and the veterans, the R&Bs, the Death Proofs may want to say to them, hey, what do you guys do well? What are you looking to do? We're going to give you X amount, so don't go crazy. This is basically, you're kind of going to get dumped, but we're going to give you a little something. And, hopefully at that point they express what they feel will look good, will be able to impress the promoter, booker, to where, hey, you know what? Maybe this can be something that'll stick. The only reason we put Chase and Nick together was basically because Nick was improving huge for a guy with very little time. Chase had some experience for a few years wrestling in Louisiana, but we saw he didn't have, he wasn't a total package yet. He wasn't developed yet. You saw a lot of raw talent, and he quickly, whether it was rust, combination of things, but working with good people, and also working with good people to say, hey, blah, 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 do this. Hey, try that. And, we felt that those guys, since we were short on a babyface tag team, that they would be able to fit in and, be able to work the guys like the Suavecitos and the creature features and even the sky highs or the unguided or even the, you know, R&B or death proof, you know, to get experience. You know, the long-term goal with them too is not to be a tag team unless something miraculous happens. They have matching gear. They got a really cool name and they start, you know, they're the new rockers, you know what I mean? But the idea is for them to be singles guys down the line. And in most cases, most people want to be that single star, which again kind of pushes the ego thing. They want to be the guy.
Right.
You know what I mean? So when it comes to, it's the levels that you're at. So now there's, you know, guys like Creature Feature and, you know, the Shoguns and the Frescos and guys like that who are a little more okay with trying to come with an idea.
Yeah.
Where in the past, they probably really wouldn't, you know? And there's some guys who always have ideas, no matter how low they are in the card, and think they know everything and they know more than the guy who's been in the business for 10 years. Hey, what if we do this? And it's like, what if you shut the fuck up? You know? And in some cases, they don't want to shut the fuck up. Like, you know, and again, now that goes to, okay, are they really passionate about an idea? Or is it they just want their idea to be the one that's used? You know what I mean? It's like I said, if I have an idea and somebody else has an idea and it's similar enough to get to where I want it to go, I'm more than happy to try to go with their idea. There have been a couple of ideas that were like, hey, we should try this, blah, blah, blah. Okay, you know what? It's a future shock. You know, I'm gonna let you do your thing. And then the idea was fucked up and it didn't work. And after the fact, all we could do was move on. It was worth the shot. It didn't happen, you know? And then there's sometimes, you know, the ideas work shockingly to a higher level than you even think it would, you know?
Right.
And, or things get changed or, hey, let's try this. Oh, you know, a lot of times stuff is done on the fly, you know, coming up with ideas. You know, I'll have an idea, and in most cases, Remy will always have a different idea, you know. No matter how good my idea is, he always seems to have one that's better. Just ask him, you know. And in some cases, it's not. And in a lot of cases, it doesn't go to where I want to go. But when it's minor stuff and it's adjusting the finish or doing stuff, it's like, you know what? We have too much going on in the show that I'm not going to be a stickler because I'm a guy who I'll give you way more freedom to do stuff than I would think, say, a Dave Marquez will. You know, he's doing his TV thing and his structure is his structure and he has his group and everything's already kind of pre-planned. With us, you know, when we're going to have a match, I may say, hey, we, you know, do this. Hey, well, what about if we, you know, do this? You know, talked about like a guy like Hero Lou, where sometimes he's a little too giving, you know, in situations where sometimes you need to take. Sometimes you need to not be the nice guy. And you have to be able to pick your spots. You know, there's always a great saying about, you know, a hill to die on. You know, Remy likes using that phrase a lot. And, you know, hey, you know, this is what I think, but it's not a hill I'm going to die on. Whether it's in response to somebody getting on a show, somebody doing something, you know, the setup of what we're doing in the match, you know, there's a lot of inner workings, but it's also done very quickly, you know. Try to let the more experienced guys. Like this week, we're going to have Tito Escondido against Hero Lou. And I believe that's a great match for Hero.
Yeah.
In the growth experience of his young career. You know, he seems to have worked better when he's wrestling guys like he did EC3 and a guy like Andy Brown, who have done it for a lot longer, where Hero's just got to focus on himself instead of focusing on both guys. And if he's working underneath guy, trying to put stuff together, you know, he's more concentrating in his head on what he needs to do to become better. He's not really in that position to make Brandon G better.
Right.
All he can hear is, hey, Brandon, what do you want to do? And it's like, well, yeah, I do this and I want to do that. And he'll be like, oh, okay. Because he's just trying to have a good match. He's not trying to understand that, hey, 80-20 doesn't mean 50-50. You know what I mean? And that's what experience will get you. You know, everybody thinks they know. And then 2 years later, they're like, oh, yeah, I know now. You know, it's the terrible twos. You know, they want to believe, okay, well, I've been training for 2 years and, you know, I wrestle, you know, once or twice a week for a year. I know everything. Until you don't know everything, you know. And you also got to understand, when you're working on my show, I kind of want things this way. When you go to Hollywood, you go to work it their way. You ain't going to go up to them and say, yeah, but I work for Joe and Joe's cool with me doing this, that, and the other thing. And Marquez will say, hit the fucking bricks and go work for fucking Joe.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and the etiquette and how to handle things, and, you know, being on time for call time in Arizona means you need to figure out how to get to call time when you're 5 minutes away. You know, I can't make it till 5:30, but if you were in Arizona, you would have left at 9 a.m. and you wouldn't have worried about it. So it's like, you know, you want to talk about, hey, home promotion. Hey, you need to, you know, well, why aren't we on the show? Hey, why are you using these guys? And it's like, they're there before you, because they treat it as what it is. The wrestling is one thing. When we do a show, it's a different thing.
Yeah.
You know? And then it intertwines when you're a young guy who a lot of things is like, hey, don't forget after the show, I know you had a match, Superstar, but you also need to like fucking clean up the fucking gym.
Yeah, that's so true. And isn't it funny how at the end of the show, all the young guys just kind of happen to be talking to this person or that person with the side eye kind of looking and just kind of going, okay, all right. Oh, someone else is doing it. Great. You know, putting it off. Yeah, putting it off as much as they can.
They worked hard in their 9-minute match, you know.
Let me ask you, and I don't know if I've ever asked you this question before. What might have been, without, you know, giving names or anything like that, is there something that sticks out to you as either character-wise or storyline-wise as something that was just absolutely one of the worst things you ever heard come across your ears? Have you had one of those standouts for you where you're just like, oh God, this one?
Well, I had one that everybody else felt that way when I was talking about Cody and the cancer angle. And, you know, I've told this story before. Whether I've told it here, I don't know. But Cody had a massive weight loss, okay? Right. And at that time, Cody was the lovable loser. And in my mind, in wrestling, you're telling stories. It's like a mini movie. And in a mini movie, somebody can have cancer. So I said, hey, Cody, I got this idea. And the idea was, he's lost all this weight. He comes out and he basically has to announce his retirement, okay? That he is going through, he has cancer. When Cody was first, you know, we'll backstory it till 2009 or 2010. where we did a story where Cody won the fan vote for Rookie of the Year. Mike DeLite felt that he should have been the Rookie of the Year. And basically it led to Cody, whose grandfather, I guess, was very involved with him watching wrestling and watching it together and things like that. And I guess the grandfather passed away years ago, no idea what. But as talking about his grandfather, Cody was basically in tears, where he cries. He says he can cry on command. Okay. So fast forward 8 years, 7 years, and I'm like, hey, I got this idea. At the time, Jack Manley is the No Limits champion.
Okay.
And, Cody is the lovable loser. Everybody loves Cody, but he just doesn't win matches. You know what I mean? Now, It's a heartbreaking announcement that the dude's got cancer. And now he cuts the promo, before I go to see you, Grandpa, nothing I would like better than to have that No Limits title around my waist. Okay? So, being friends, Jack Manley gives Crash Test Cody at the time.
Right.
A match. The farewell match of Cody. Okay? We do the Ric Flair, Shawn Michaels thing. It's back and forth, some near falls, and now it looks like Cody's being put away. And at that point, Jack Manley gives the I love you, hits him with the fucking shot. At that point, he kind of, sighs, whatever. Like, he's upset because he has to pin Cody.
Right.
And because of taking too much time, Cody kind of rolls him up, wins 1, 2, 3, and it turns out it was all a ruse and he didn't have cancer. And that was the Cody heel turn, which I thought was brilliant. But there were some people who were like, holy shit, that's fucking awesome. And most people were like, you can't do that. And I'm like, why not? It's a movie.
Right.
Movies talk about everything. Why can't we talk about that? But yeah, that one definitely went by the wayside. Then as a group, I remember we put the agency together.
Okay.
And years later, a Clutch and, a Gregory Sharp, they will talk about how disastrous, that was, good ideas. I remember we did something where Kid Vegas was feuding with them and it was a loser leaves town. He was moving in Oklahoma or something. So he lost and he left. And then a month later, he came back. So he had this brilliant idea to come in under a mask. And I thought it was like the biggest thrift shop outfit I had seen. And it was called Maniacal. And pretty much everybody knew it was him. And it was just really the shits. And everything didn't work in that. So that was a group, that was one of the failed groups. We've had factions. We've had factions. They may not have lasted as long, but that was one that'll go down in the record books as one that wasn't really successful. Like the Evasion Originals, I thought was a great idea I had, utilizing, initially it was Rush and Partain, and then when Legacy left the Hater Nation and they broke up, he was a perfect fit because he was a guy involved, with Rush's school.
Right.
And then they feuded with Cash at one point, and then Cash joined the Vegas Originals, even though he wasn't original. So that was another faction, that had its day mixed in with the, the Following and the Haters and the Dynasty and different forms of the Dynasty and stuff like that.
Have you had any ideas recently for any of the talent that you have now forming some kind of faction?
Well, we do. It's called the MK Army, brother.
Well, I mean, you've got that faction, but is there a faction to go against the army? Is that kind of a direction that, we might see it headed almost into a Survivor Series type matchup where you have like a 4-on-4 or 5-on-5?
Well, yeah, that is definitely the plan. Obviously, the MK Army have their eyes set on Hammerstone. Well, Toko Uso and Tito, and basically MK's, open pocketbook, allows him to bring in a guy like Brian Pillman Jr., who unfortunately didn't make it. Well, then he called in, a guy from Bloodsport who has a phenomenal amateur wrestling background in Jack, and he could make one call. So there's always another guy. I know for a fact he's been on, the phone with even former FSW heavyweight champion Brian Cage. So, there's numerous guys on that horizon, and being the fact that MK got involved, and who's Hammerstone's buddy? Well, a guy like Graves. Well, now you got a guy like Hammerstone, you got a guy like Graves, who's some young up and coming baby faces that you may want or may want to help out. You got a Shogun, you got, who've had his ups and downs with Hammerstone and Graves, a Hero Lou who can benefit by doing that. So, ideas are kind of set with that in terms of, faction warfare type of things, with Ice Williams now becoming part of Ice Camera Faction, Lights Camera Faction, whatever it is. Well, obviously, Cepha and Chris Bay have something to say about Ice Williams. And this
Right.
Saturday night, Cepha Fatu and Ice Williams will be in the arena together. So the question is, what's going to happen between those two? And, we're also looking for a match for Ice Williams on May 14th. So, who could it be?
Yeah, that's very intriguing. I like that that aura of I've always thought that there's so much value in guys not necessarily touching for a while, and setting up that, if it's what it's been, it would be 3 weeks essentially between the end of the last show where Ice Camera Faction gets the best of them to now potentially locking up for the first time. For you, how do you determine, is it through either what's laid out in terms of your ideas and plans, or is it even kind of getting a feel of how the fans are absorbing it to, pick when the right time to go with a certain match, as opposed to, just putting the match out there because, well, it's what we plotted, it's part of the story, it's what we're doing. Can it benefit for you to go either, let's put the brakes on it a little bit and let this kind of play out, or hey, maybe we should just speed this up and kind of, go on to the next idea?
Well, if you look at May 14th, for example, we've changed that card up 10 different times. Initially, we've been wanting to do Leo Rush and Chris Bay, for the last year, but GCW was going to do the match. So now it's like, okay, so who we're going to bring in? Okay, we're going to bring in Trey Miguel. We got Chris Bay. So, who is he going to work? One idea was, say a Trey Lamar or Jordan Oliver. And then we had Remy Marcel set to go up against Sean Duvall for the Nevada State. Then I woke up one morning and Davari sent me a message about how Impact changed the dates of the tapings. So I immediately am not happy, obviously. Then Chris Bay sends me a wonderful Facebook matches. Hey, and it's like, hey, I just got word that they changed the date of the tapings. He's like, yeah, that's what I messaged you for. And I'm like, yeah, what the fuck? It's like, so now we got to scramble. So one idea was, Hammerstone versus Cepha. Okay. Talked with Chris Bay. He was going to get back into the mix. He was healthy. He wanted to wrestle some FSW shows. Always wanted to wrestle Cepha. So we kind of set that up. Ice Williams initially was probably going to work Jordan Oliver at the taping. I even had mentioned it to him. And Cepha and Bay had the match. They did their thing. And it's like, well, common sense means that this grouping needs to stay that grouping. It would make no sense to do what happened at Ground Zero to not showcase it. That's why we're good at telling the stories more so than a lot of other companies. To just have random matches is what a lot of companies do. We're trying to invest in what the story is. So moving forward, obviously Chris Bay and Ice can't happen at May 14th because there's no Chris Bay there. But we also are setting up things for the anniversary show. So where do they go there? MK's involved with Hammerstone. Unfortunately for MK, we're going to have a 6-man tag with Toko Uso and Tito. Who they're going to wrestle at this point is Graves, and we don't know the other two yet. Now, that follow-up is what's key. Like, okay, is Chris Bay going to wrestle Ice Williams? Is Chris Bay going to wrestle Cepha again? You know what I mean? It's like, who's going to be the No Limits champion? Is Cepha going to wrestle Ice and win the title? But putting everything in place, and again, unfortunately, sometimes things don't work out, and we have to adjust on the fly. I found out the day before the show that Pillman wasn't making the show. So I had to scramble. Then the next day, I found out Gatson got hurt and he wasn't going to be on the show.
Right.
So, we adjusted some different things. And, we had a match set up on May 14th that we're trying to figure out now. The Unguided are going to defend the tag belts, obviously. And they were going to defend against the Bad Bitches. But Parada's got some things, and he's not going to make the show. So the question is, do we put another tag team in there? Or do we find a partner suitable for Jay Vidal, which is honestly what I'm leaning toward. And because I think it'd be an exciting match. And with Jay Vidal beating Matt Vandegrift, it kind of set up the idea for them guys to get a tag title match. Now, Jay Vidal, I'm not going to punish one of the top rising stars in the company and say, oh, Parada's not going to be there. I guess what? You're not now on the biggest show we've had in over a year. Yeah, you're like the hottest fan base wise. That would be a travesty not to be on there with everything he's done this year. So, but then we got a scramble match that we talked about. That may get adjusted. Maybe we pull somebody from there. There's a lot of good talent there. Gatson says he's ready to go. I thought we'd have to replace him. Jack Cartwheel, Adrian Quest, Eli Everfly, Funny Bone. You know what I mean? Jay Vidal can pick any one of those guys, and that match with the Unguided would be amazing. Look at that. You're in stunned disbelief. You froze up.
Yes, I did. I am back, I think. I hope. Um, you know, in talking about the 14th, that's going to be available on Fight TV. Right now, when you look at the card, can you give the listeners an idea of what they're going to see on the 14th? And then also for Psycho de Mayo here on the 8th, what are we looking forward to on that? And people who can't make it to the FSW arena will get a chance to see this if they subscribe to the FSW network. What do we have in store, Joe?
Well, let's start with the 8th, because that's this week, and build up to the big show. Well, Psycho Clown and Sam Adonis, fresh off their main event thing over at the pay-per-view that they had this past weekend. We got Sandra Moon and Strella in a no DQ match to try to really finalize and solidify the number one contender. Brett the Threat and Rocky T are going to have a street fight. A lot of people are like, oh, well, it's kind of like a no DQ. Well, no, it really isn't. A street fight's a fight. No DQ is a wrestling match where kind of anything goes. So it definitely will be different. We got Tito versus Hero Lou. Wise Guy will be back. He's going to take on Nick Xander. So, we still got a few other matches that we're working on for that show. Creature Feature is going to wrestle the Suavecitos. And, again, we're still figuring out a couple more matches that we will be having for sure. And then on that one, if you're subscribed to the network, free of charge, you can watch the event. Tickets are still available. Got a lot of new faces that seem to be starting to make their way, and some old faces that we haven't seen in a while. So, tickets are getting extremely limited, Yeah. And then on the 14th, we're pretty much sold out of first row. Nice. I'm trying to squeeze in the last of our regulars, so we're not even making tickets available. So there might be some, but our regulars, I'm giving them the opportunity to get their tickets. So if they pass, then we may open up a few. But that show is stacked from top to bottom. Hammerstone's going to defend against Jordan Oliver, who's one of the top independent guys. He'll be working GCW the next day. Leo Rush gets to work Trey Lamar in a match that, both guys have been wanting. Leo Rush, he has a hit list, so that's going to be a first-time ever match, as well as the Hammerstone match. RMB and Death Proof, they're going to continue their best of 3 series. We already have the women's championship match penciled in. So Maserati will defend against the winner of the match on the 8th between Sandra Moon and Strella, which would be interesting to see, either way. But it will definitely be interesting to see if Strella gets the title shot, what Maz is going to try to offer her. We got the scramble match that we just talked about. The Unguided are going to defend the tag titles. We got the MK Army is going to be in a 6-man tag. MK wanted to make sure his guys were spotlighted. So, of course, we, okayed that. We're just working on, the perfect 6-man tag that we can, put together on that show. Ice Williams is going to defend. Sefa Fatu will be there. Seems like a perfect fit. So, the card is one of the best ones that we've had in a very, very long time. And that one's going to be on Fight TV. Normally most people buy the pay-per-view the day of, the night of.
Right.
You get them trickled in. As of 2 weeks before the show, we had more buys than we've ever had 3 days before anything we've ever, done before.
Wow.
So,
wow.
That's definitely a good sign. So that makes me feel like, working with GCW is definitely helping. They're putting our stuff over. Hey, anybody in town? We've gotten some GCW fans who are coming to Vegas who've bought tickets to the show. And, Trey Lamar and Leo Rush hasn't happened before. That's a match that GCW would normally spotlight. And,
Right.
The one great thing that comes out of Chris Bay not being there because of the Impact tapings is we can still do him and Leo Rush first.
Yeah.
Can anybody say anniversary show?
Awesome. It's just going to be a wonderful 2 weeks here coming up. Before we go, Joe, any final thoughts for the listeners?
If you're a wrestling fan, we're able to add more seats. There's the only 3-foot rule instead of 6. So it puts more people in the building. Everybody's still got to wear a mask. We take their temperatures. We're trying to be as safe as possible. But you know what? Vegas is opening up and the numbers are still down. And it's time to go out and have a good time. And if you still feel leery about coming to the show live, you're going to get an opportunity to watch a great event as long as you're subscribed for $7 to the network, and you get to watch the show for free. Technically,
yeah.
It's part of the coverage. You'll also get to watch Future Shock on May 28th, included in the package. And again, we are also working on some, great new programming and even talking about, Dojo Wars and doing a weekday show similar to Rikishi's, to where the young kids, in front of no audience get to wrestle in front of fans.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. It's just exciting that we're opening back up, and you're on top of it. You've been hungry for this for the past year plus now. And
I'm starving.
Say that again, Joe.
I said I'm starving. That's how hungry I am.
Well, everyone listening, I hope you guys are starving too. Please, reach out to Joe for tickets. Again, they're going fast. But if you can't make it for whatever reason, or if you're, somewhere across the country, across the world, check out the FSW network, and definitely check out the Fight TV pay-per-view on the 14th as well. And until then, everybody, take care and enjoy the rest of your week. Bye-bye.